Buongiorno. You're listening to Going, Where God is at Work, a podcast where cross cultural workers discuss everything from faith and fear to finances and faux pas. We're walking out our call to ministry in faraway places and happy to have you join us on the journey. I'm your host, Jesse Pauli, missions leader serving in Rome, and I'm here with Alessandro Di Leonardo, church planner in Cisterna di Latina, and Jen Williamson, our missiologist who lives and works in Lyon. Good morning, guys. How you doing?
Good
Hi,
morning.
Jesse.
Afternoon here. We are in Italy, and Jen, you are in France, right?
Yes, I am home. I got home last week from a bunch of travel.
Where are you,
Yeah,
Jesse? That you're greeting
I'm.
us good morning.
Yeah, I'm greeting you good morning because it's seven in the morning here, 7:30 in the morning, and I'm in Kansas right now. So, but not for long. We'll be heading back to the Italy tomorrow morning. So,
You ready to be home?
yeah, yeah, I'm definitely. It's been 5 weeks on of traveling. It's been really full. So we were calculating it, and it was something like 30 or more different speaking engagements, either with churches or families or small groups. So almost one a day. So it was, in some weeks it was two a day. So it was pretty intense time. But
With two
in
kids, with two small kids.
yes, with a toddler, a 2-year old, and a 10-month-old. So that's been fun. But yeah, so actually, our topic today is going to be very pertinent to me or applicable to me because when we get back, one of the first things I need to do is write a newsletter to all of our supporters. And today, on episode 5, we're talking about the missionary newsletter, fact or fiction. Do you guys do a monthly newsletter? What does that look like? Or what is your preferred method of communication?
We say we do a quarterly newsletter. About the past 5 years, we've done 2 quarterly newsletters a year. So we really don't get them out quarterly. But what we do is we have what we call the Williamson Weekly. And to people who they had to opt into it because we just didn't want to fill people's emails with, who weren't going to read it or didn't care. But if you people who said they really wanted to pray with us in a, weekly basis, they get the Williamson Weekly. And what that has is like prayer requests for the upcoming week with like just each day of the week, whatever sort of the most pertinent event or activity or going on in our David or I's life, whatever that is, we ask for prayer. And then we give for the previous week, we give follow-ups to what they prayed for. So everything that was prayed for the previous week, we give them feedback on how that went or what happened or where we are with it now. And there's only like about 30, 35 people that get that. But that goes out every Monday. It's also a great way for David and I to kind of touch base with each other and look at our agendas and see what's coming ahead.
Now, Jen, is there a response, a way to respond?
Yeah, people can write back, but we say, hey, if you have anything you'd like for us to pray for, please write back. And yeah, people do occasionally send back with their prayer requests as well.
That's awesome. For us, we now do a monthly newsletter. Me and my wife tag team. She's the graphic designer, so I do all the writing, and then she makes it pretty. And so that's been our pattern. When we first came to the field, or even before, which was 5 years ago, we kind of being the younger generation, we're like, we don't want to do newsletters, or we want to do something better. And so we were doing monthly video updates. That was killer. We did that for a year, and then our daughter was born, and we just stopped. So now we just do writing, old school, well, still new school internet newsletter. But that was fun. But it took a lot of out of us.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, you mentioned it. It's interesting. Is that old school or is that new school? If you think like historically, missionaries had to write like physical letters to their sending churches, and someone would have to like copy them eventually, like and send them out. And yeah, now, well, like to your point, Alessandro, it seems like now, but maybe it is old school to have to send emails or blogs. And I know there's a newer one that's kind of like an Instagram, but for missionaries, and they you can post just little picture and snippets. I forget the name of that one. It'll
Yeah, I've
come to me in
seen
about.
it, and maybe this is just showing how old I'm becoming, even though I'm still not old, but compared to the youngins, I've seen some do that, and I just couldn't understand what was happening. I was like, it's so packed with headings and pictures and stuff. I was like, I don't know what to look at, and our intern who's young, she was like, oh, this is very common now. So yes.
Yeah, we tried to do monthly newsletter originally, and we would use an emailing platform. We had a few people asking us to use snail mail, but we just it was like just a couple, and it's so much work to do the snail mail piece. So they actually said to us, don't worry, the church actually prints out your email, and so I'll just read it from the church. So, but we couldn't sustain doing one a month anymore, so we've moved to two every 2 months. We try and send one out, but
That's pretty good though. We try and do Christmas letters. Like that's the only snail mail thing we do, like physical.
oh, do you?
Well,
Oh,
not every year, I would say, like every second or third year. And then like this past year we used a service that you just like we could upload a picture, upload our mailing addresses, and they sent it. So it was US based, so we saved on postage because everything was sent from within the US. So there's no personal note, but there was a
mm,
photo and we could put in a little text. Very impersonal, but it gave something for people to physically open in the mail.
that's interesting. I've heard of those kind of things services offered also for missionaries, like for their prayer cards and things like that. I've never used one. I was tempted this last time, but what's the purpose? Like, what's your purpose or motivation for communicating with supporters? And even as we were, preparing this episode and seeing this question, I was like, I've never thought about this. I just have always heard that missionaries send a newsletter, and so I'm interested to hear kind of what your guys' thoughts are, and I'm sure I'll have an idea of why we do ours. But at the beginning, I was like, I don't know that I've ever put thought into why we do a newsletter.
Yeah, I actually that's the first thing that came up to me too, Jesse. Like, I just honestly, it's something that you just know missionaries do, and so you follow that pattern. But I think from from a spiritual perspective, trying to be spiritual here, just the obvious of trying to update those who are investing in you. And so, in one set, I could say that's why we're doing it. We have people investing us financially, prayerfully, but I think if I had to be like I had to like identify really how this helps us. Why we actually in our context we do it monthly is it actually keeps me focused to knowing what's happening. I feel like there's just so much happening, and I don't know if it's going to be like that forever. But we are a church plant, and there's just something happening. So whenever I'm writing a monthly newsletter, I am just shocked how much took
Mm.
place. Not to say that it's all ministry based, but it just allows us to kind of say, okay, this is what happened. So I don't have to. For me, quarterly actually doesn't sound easier. That sounds overwhelming to try to think
Oh
a
yeah,
quarter's worth of thing. I couldn't.
yeah.
So for me, I actually sounds easier to do monthly for me in my perspective. And so that's what I would say. So from one answer is like everybody does it, all the missionaries. Another answer spiritually, it's to inform those investing in you, but it also helps us to kind of keep everything in track to what
Reflect.
we're doing, reflect, yeah, and even give
Mhm.
glory to God. It gives us an
Mhm.
opportunity to just really thank Him in areas that He worked clearly.
That's so good, Alessandro. Yeah. We started doing the weekly one because some of our supporters were like, "Hey, we haven't heard from you in a while." And we're like, "Okay, we've got to get better at this." And we thought we don't have time to make it fancy and pretty. And every now and then we'll put in a picture because, people are praying for something and we have a picture taken of that event or whatever. But mostly it's literally bullet points. It may not even be complete sentences. So my first motivation was I needed to keep my supporters happy. But what I've found now and why we've been doing it faithfully for 3 years is because I like that, like what you were saying, being reflective. It gives me a minute to look back on my week and to see, okay, here's what I asked people to pray for. How did it go? What did God do? What surprised me? What would I do better next time? And as I'm sort of writing out how God answered those prayer requests, I'm thanking God. I'm, remembering what God did. I'm learning from those events. And then as I'm looking forward to the next week, I'm also kind of having to get my heart and my soul and my mind ready for what's coming. And I'm praying through my week ahead. So it's this sort of accountability, not only to my supporters, but to myself and to God with what am I doing with my time uh, here on the field.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, I feel like for me, I would say if I had to summarize my motivation, it would kind of be that reflective piece. But I agree. I think I'm hearing all of us say there's a little um, common thread of some sense of, I don't know if pressure is the right word, but like, yeah, trying to please the people that invest and give into our ministries. Um, with that being said, what would you typically include? Jen, you talked about your weekly one is kind of more focused on prayer items and stuff. But what are some of the things that you would include maybe in your quarterly newsletter and monthly for you, Alessandro?
We always do the three: logistics, ministry, and others to
Yeah.
open up. And so logistic, if there's just things that as missionaries here, maybe there's some things that we have to like figure out. So we want people to pray. For example, in the current time right now, we're working to just do some paperwork for the church. And so as boring as that sounds, we want people included in that and to pray for us. And then ministry, usually for things that have taken place for that month, because we do it at the end of the month. And then others, a lot of times, if we did a family trip or just our health, to pray for just anything, usually regarding our family. And so
Okay.
that's how we've divided it.
I know that for some people has been the struggle. Like, how much do you put about like your personal family experiences, and how much do you put, work and ministry things? Um, my wife's family are missionaries, her parents, and I remember my mother-in-law used to always say, they want to know about the kids. They want to know about how your kids are doing and your family. And I always thought, well, don't they want to know more about the ministry work that I'm doing? And so we've always tried to mix it as well. Um, depending on what's going on in life, I feel like our newsletters will kind of take a stronger position, rather it's sharing about personal things that are going on, um, or ministry events. The summertime when we hosted um, our college 10-2 project that Greater Mission does, that took the whole thing, because there's just so much stuff was related to the college students that were here for those 2 months. And then when we went through personal struggles, it was, more talk about that and what it looked like spiritually to fight spiritual warfare and things like that. So yeah, I find that it kind of depends on what you're going through in life.
Yeah, same has been true for us. Although the older our kids get, the more we felt protective of them. And I definitely, once they reached, well, we didn't come on the field till our kids were almost teenagers. So actually, from the very beginning, um, they got sort of some veto power uh, in what we said about them. We let them kind of say, yeah, you can say that, or I would rather you didn't say that, because it's their life too. And we just didn't want them to be paraded around in ways that weren't comfortable for them. So we did give our kids that. And with the Williamson Weekly, we put a note on there that this is confidential information, because honestly, I don't have the energy or the creativity or the bandwidth to change people's names of people in our church that we're praying for, or people that I'm meeting with and all of that. And I don't want someone, messaging me on Facebook and not realizing it wasn't a private message and asking, how's it going with so and so, when I've, used a real name in there. So we're like, really, we put the warning in there every week that this is confidential information. The names are real, and, please just pray. And we don't put last names, but still, it's just,
Yeah.
it really is like a private prayer letter. It's not something I want printed out and posted at the church.
Yeah. I do have to open up a little parenthesis, because you made me think of it when you said, someone sending a private message versus a public message on Facebook. So this is a bonus question. What about the use of social media when
Yeah.
communicating with your supporters? We we did for a while. We had a private Facebook group, which I actually enjoyed that. Um, but we had the similar thing where we would post something in our private Facebook group, and then someone would go to our personal public page and comment to us about things that were in the private Facebook group. Um, but the thing we've since gotten off of all social media, just our own personal decision as a couple. But one of the things I did enjoy about that was I could do quick little videos, like quick little lives. Hey, I'm heading to this. Please pray for this, that, or the other. And then just hop off, and they were there. And when people woke up in the States or whatever, they would be able to pray. What about you guys? Do you use any social media as part of your communication with your supporters?
I do not.
At
Not
the
right now.
moment, I do not. Yeah, same
Oh,
here. I do not. It's
that's a short parentheses.
yeah. I don't think I ever have. I do like the. I do use Facebook for ministry, and so I'm not off of it. But I just always felt like I could see myself making that mistake. Someone who's using social media and is a little bit tech savvy in some things. I could see myself making that mistake. So
I like it
I
though.
mhm.
I follow people like Jesse. I think I was in your private group. I'm in several people's private groups, and it does prompt me to when I'm on there, which isn't all that often, but it does prompt me to pray, and I do think it's helpful. So I think it's a great tool. It's just not something that I've gotten into using.
Yeah, and maybe a parenthesis of a parenthesis, and you kind of alluded or mentioned something. I think it was you, Jesse, about uh, how much to share. Honestly, I share in the newsletter as much as I'm comfortable sharing if I was talking to that person. And so I kind of
Mm,
take like some of the more personal stuff. It's not like I'm bottling it up. I have mentors. I have people like yourself, Jesse, that we're in proximity, so we at times get to see each other and we get to pray together and talk about different things. So we do have accountability. At least, hopefully, all missionaries do have some sort of accountability. And so what's being shared, a lot of it is just to keep updated, not
mm.
the most not something that you would share like if I was like as you were doing, going around to different churches. Like if I probably would share the exact same thing I shared in a newsletter, what I would share in front of an audience that is potentially supporting me or wants to support me. And that's how I think about it. I wouldn't
Yeah.
share anything more than that. And so
Mm,
that's
that's
how I
good.
see my newsletters.
Speaking speaking of that, of what do you choose? How do you choose what to share, Jen? In your dissertation, you talk about some rather disturbing data about missionary updates and newsletters. What did you discover in your research?
We'll put a link in the show notes to the article that I'm about to quote from, but it was found on the Gospel Coalition website. And the article was called Five Ways Mission Agencies Stretch the Truth. And in it, Darren Carlson of the Gospel Coalition writes, I read a lot of emails and newsletters from mission agencies, and I get to see how many of them use statistics to recruit staff, missionaries, and donors. Sadly, in my experience, many exaggerate the truth. Carlson indicates that some agency reports are straight up exaggerations and others are double dipping, where two organizations that are working together both present the same results as their own. And finally, he laments that home offices fail to check the facts that are being reported by missionaries on the field, resulting in the propagation of false claims. So, this article is talking primarily about mission agencies, not individual missionaries. But as it alluded to in the end, mission agencies are making their claims based on the reports of missionaries. And so I've also here in France had many missionary partners. Eventually missionaries will add their French partners or their national partners to their newsletters and be expanding that newsletter list. And these national partners will just sometimes shake their head thinking the numbers that these people are reporting and how many are in their church or how many people got saved at such and such event or all of this are just astronomical and outright lies. So in some ways I understand the temptation to lie. I mean, we are literally living off of the generosity of others. People who are supporting us, and they believe that we are a good investment in the kingdom of God, like we've all talked about already. They're investing on us. So if month after month, year after year, we don't see fruit, or we don't feel like we have fruit that we can communicate. I'm putting fruit in air quotes here because that's a whole nother episode that we're going to have to talk about. What even is that? But it can be tempting to invent some, or to embellish the truth, or to exaggerate maybe our experience.
Hmm.
Yeah, if I could comment on that, I think just I completely understand what you're saying, Jen. I just maybe to clarify, just sort of this the word lie, right? Like it's such a strong word,
Strong. Yeah.
and I completely understand. And there's, for example, there's a book that I was reading by it's called No Shortcut to Success: A Manifesto for Modern Missions by Matt Rhodes, and he kind of talks about that idea how just numbers are just exaggerated, and some of them don't make sense. You know, like we have. I'm just throwing out numbers here. I'm not actually quoting the book, but an example would be like there's 100 churches being planted every month, and it's like 100 churches every month, you know. That's a lot of churches. So that sort of thing. But I something to there are those who, just like in any good thing, right, in the world, people can abuse it, and so there are those who actually abuse the opportunity to be a missionary and do God's work, where they see it's an easy way to make a living. And then there's those who are, like you said, Jen, are tempted and find themselves not necessarily tempted as in, should I do it, should I not? They just don't even realize they're doing it
Right.
because they're kind of going with the flow. I remember my first experience when I was back in the States, when I was still an associate pastor. We were supporting a missionary. This was my first experience where we were thinking of getting a church planter in the Philippines. And so we found somebody, we met him, we were all go. And long story short is that this guy lied to us. He was taking false pictures, this and that. And we found out at the end, thankfully, by God's provision and providence, by people who were living there who told us that this guy is has not been living right with the Lord. He had credentials from the past, and I guess and somewhere along the line he went the wrong way. And so, just to say, there's those people, unfortunately, and then there's probably the other side of things where we just don't even realize what is it that we're doing.
Mm.
Yeah.
And sometimes I think it's cultural. Like Americans, we're pretty optimistic and positive. So I could go to the same event as my French national partner, and my experience of it might be different and more positive in terms of what I come away with than theirs. And some of that could just be a cultural interpretation and not necessarily an outright lie.
I've always feared to fall in that second category of sorts that Alessandro was describing, of the missionary who just was going with the flow and didn't realize if I was
Yeah.
exaggerating or something. I've feared that. But this trip that I'm on right now has been actually really helpful in that, because for the first part of the trip, we actually brought an Italian national partner that we work alongside with us. And so he was hearing me present to the churches that support us in the group, small groups, and he was jumping in and presenting himself. And I just kept asking him, okay, how am I representing your country? How am I representing your people? Because when we would be driving between town and town, I would use that windshield time to ask him those questions, and he actually affirmed that, like, the things I were saying were good and right. He said, he said, if anything, that you're painting the picture as being a little bit better for evangelicals in Italy than it really is. He kept reminding me of the statistics and saying, really, it's the statistics that are spread are kind of a little bit better, given a better picture than really what is actually there. It's actually worse than what the statistics, and the statistics are already bad. Um, and so it was really helpful for me to actually spend that time talking with someone who I respect and who is a leader in the evangelical world in Italy. Um, to that
That's good.
to that though, point, I do see. Yeah, I can definitely see, and I think it gets hard. You know, we partner a lot in our organization. One of the values is partnership, and so we're partnering with other churches, other missionaries to try and see God's kingdom spread. And I'm sure that some of the missionaries that we partner with that aren't within our organization are reporting the same people showing up to their Bible studies, the same baptisms and things that we're reporting. And so, yeah, there are probably, two organizations reporting numbers on the same person. But to be honest, I don't really know how we fix that. I'm not sure how we fix that.
Yeah, that's a complicated one. Yeah.
Um, so while we can be tempted to, stretch the truth, um, and I think, like we've all said, like we all face that temptation, or we all get swept into the flow of kind of reporting on things. Does that mean that we, in an effort to be honest, that we need to just disclose everything, all of our fears and insecurities, maybe about what we're dealing with in ministry, or what are some thoughts, um, that you guys might have on what missionaries are obligated to share?
I really appreciate what Alessandro already said about this in terms of like there are accountability partners on the sense of we're accountable to be doing the ministry for which they're paying, that they're funding us to do. But, if I'm having a personal struggle, I don't know that I have to be accountable in my newsletter to all 80 of my individual supporters. I need a church group around me. I need a close friend near me. I need a different kind of accountability. And I think, yeah, I think it does get sometimes iffy issues around, children or conflicts on teams, things like that. Because if God is leading you to make a change, either, a family needs to go back because a child has been diagnosed with autism and, the country that they're in doesn't support that well, or, um, some other issues. Yeah, I mean, you want to be preparing your supporters for changes on one sense, and the other sense, I just don't think that we have to tell everything. Um, but then I don't know, I'm really leery of deception. I remember when we first came on the field, we knew a missionary who would Photoshop bottles of wine off of the table in pictures that were being sent to supporters. That to me, that we're starting to get into an integrity issue. Like, do you need to announce in your newsletter, hey, I drink wine? No, but if you're hiding something, if it's something that would cause your supporters to step away, I think you need to have honesty about that and either say, hey, we live in France, we're probably going to drink wine. We won't drink it to excess. But if that really bothers you, you need to know up front that this is probably the lifestyle that we're going to be living. So, I mean, I think it's, I think I have to ask myself, why is this information something I don't want to share? I also met missionaries who, for example, would never tell their supporters if they were going on vacation because they thought it would look like they, were spending too much money on extravagances when, I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I have single moms working two jobs giving $10 a month to me. So, you, and at the same time, so I always ask myself, wait, what's keeping me from saying this? Am I protecting the privacy of my children, or um, an issue that's between me and God, and that doesn't just need to be disclosed, or am I hiding this for some reason because I feel guilty about it? And if I feel guilty about it, should I be doing it?
Yeah, that's so. Yeah, kind of talked about one side of things, but also it kind of also shows you how much do people know about what you're doing? Do you have people who are coming in to check? Like if you're working with a church that has a mission organization or a mission ministry, is someone coming in to kind of, I think that's wise to kind of check out what's happening, to be more connected, maybe sending mission trips, this and that. And so I could see like the we're not in the days where only the snail mail was the only way for them to know what's happening. There's so much. So, for example, sometimes we include in our newsletter about a vacation. Uh, I don't all the time, not because I'm hiding about it, it's because we're also very active in our social media. So most of our prayer partners also follow us on Facebook and Instagram, and so we'll post it there because it's sort of like this is more like us as a family. They'll know that we went to vacation, but they don't need to
Mm,
read about it and kind of say, "Man, I'm stuck here working 9 to 5. I can't even get a vacation." And but I'm not saying that's wrong too. I'm just saying we tend to spread how we communicate to those who know
yeah.
us.
Yeah.
Um, Whether
Agreed.
people come through and do a short term mission, they see it. I think when people are really when someone comes like, "Wow, I didn't know this was happening in your life," that's maybe an issue that you're not communicating well to what's happening.
Yeah.
I think sometimes we forget the intentionality we do in other contexts, right? Like you kind of have a work email and a personal email. So like you send emails out. And I think that I don't want to open up this discussion maybe in this podcast, but I think sometimes that gets blurry in missions. What part is my
Totally.
work life and what's my personal life? And I like what you're saying, Alessandro. Things that you share on Facebook and social media are kind of just your personal family life. You would have that lifestyle even if you were in any country or any place, and so you share that there. And
Yeah.
your emails that you send out are specifically about the work that you're doing or the things that you're facing as a global worker for the gospel. So, well, that is our episode. Thanks everyone for listeners. We'd love to hear from you, whether you are a missionary or a donor or a family from a missionary sending church. We'd love to understand and get feedback on what types of information you want to hear and receive um, from your missionaries that you support and how often you'd like to receive that. Feel free to send us a note. If you're listening on Spotify, you have the option of writing us and leaving a comment or sending in a voice memo to us and leaving a question or a thought via a voice memo. So we look forward to hearing from you. But thanks for listening to this week's episode of Going Where God is at Work.
Arrivederci.
Ciao.
Ciao.
All right, guys. So I'm going to ask this question and I will answer it too. But the question is, have you ever lied or stretched the truth or exaggerated or misrepresented your ministry when communicating it to your supporters?
So again, for me, with this word lied, I would say I don't think I ever lied intentionally. I think it would be lied not doing the homework. I think sometimes I just quickly look up statistics and doing a bad job and not really looking at where it's coming from. If that resource is available is um, something you can trust,
Reliable?
reliable. And so I think in that sense, I definitely have. And then you said stretch the truth. Um, yeah, I guess sometimes again, it's not because I'm trying to puff something up. I think sometimes it's just don't do enough thinking about like, okay, let's really think how many people were coming. But I feel like at times we see that in the Bible. Like we see in the Bible in the New Testament, Jesus fed the 5,000 and some, and then there's another instant where Jesus caught the fish, right? Or at least he had the fishermen catch the fish, and there was 153 fishes. And it's like, oh, that's like so specific. Well, maybe in that case they actually counted the fish, but another time they were like, well, maybe there was about 5,000,
Mhm.
not counting the women and children. So I don't think necessarily that we can like need to report every detail in every specific way. But I do think a lot of times if I was going to say, have I lied, it would be because I didn't do enough thinking or homework or checking my facts
Mm,
in that sense.
yeah. Me, I'm probably more guilty of what I would call the sin of omission, where if an event didn't go as I wanted or a sermon didn't go as I wanted, maybe I just wouldn't mention it, or maybe I just wouldn't talk about it. Um, so I've had things that, and part of it's because like we can be very irregular in our communications anyways. So sometimes maybe it's just forgetfulness. It slides off the radar. But sometimes it's like, yeah, I don't know what to say about that. We planned this outreach event and 2 people showed up. I don't know what to say about it, you know?
Yeah.
But I think it's helpful to do it. There's other
Yeah,
times when I have actually been really forthcoming, and I think it's helpful because I think the reality is missions is a long, long, hard slog. And if they only hear about the highlights and the great events and the fantastic successes, then I think we set missionary supporters up to expect that kind of thing consistently and all the time, and not to be with us in the long, hard slog. So I actually want to be faithful about not omitting the events or the experiences that didn't go as I had wished.
yeah. No, that's good. I think for me, it's also idea of leaving certain things out, or um, just not talking about certain things, or focusing more on the highlights and not. I think that's the trickiest part. I really don't think it's a matter of like straight lying, or really even straight exaggerating things. I have read some missionary newsletters where some of the most random details are exaggerated too. It's not like the important details
Mm-hmm.
of like salvations of it's like some of the most random silly details are exaggerated. Um, but I think it's more the question of like how much am I oversharing, or am I not sharing enough?
Yeah.
I think that's kind of trying to go back and forth and find that balance is probably what I would struggle with the most. But awesome.